We should also mention that there was lots of rumors when this was going on that you were leaving WWE and doing some boxing and doing some MMA. Of course, everybody online was thinking, well, a lot of other guys when they leave WWE, they find themselves in the impact zone for TNA wrestling.
Yeah,
Did that get very far? Did your conversations get very far in 2013?
not really. Uh, Dixie Carter flew to. Her family was having a weekend. I think it was a Memorial Day, something like that. It was a holiday, and they have a ranch in North Texas, which is about a 30-minute plane ride from Norman, believe it or not, on their plane. So they came there and picked me up and took me down to the ranch. I spent the day there talking to Mr. and Mrs. Carter, hanging around with Dixie, talking about the business. And I always fall back on that old Bill Parcells thing. You want me to cook the dinner? You got to let me buy some of the groceries,
Yeah.
and I got to have more. It sounds egocentric, but it's just self preservation. I got to have some influence on who's on the roster. If I'm going to be responsible for their productivity, you got to let me pick some pieces here.
So they
And
weren't
so,
just talking to you about doing commentary. They were wanting you to have an office position as well.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
If I was going to go, Connie, the only way I was going to go is to be in charge
I
at
got
that
you.
stage of my life and the game and all this other stuff. And my administrative work in WWE certainly, I think, qualified me for that role.
No doubt.
But she just didn't feel comfortable, uh, in moving me in that direction. Yeah, they were very the commentary was a no brainer.
Right.
That was easy. Probably Tanay and I on that team. Not no disrespect to the late Don West. He may have been out there too. Hell, I don't know. He never
Yeah.
got that far. So, but I had a great visit with. I like the Carters. I could see myself working for them in that era and enjoying it. So it just was. It just wasn't meant to be at that point in time. Dixie and I are friends. We still are friends. When I go to Nashville, she and I tend to go to lunch. I enjoy visiting with her. I admire what she's accomplished in a men's world, and I shudder to think how many times that talents have tried to outwork her and take advantage of the situation. That's just normal course of business in pro wrestling, feathering one's own nest, shall we say. So, but I had a good visit with them. I stayed all day. They flew me back home that night, and we all lived happily ever after.
Well, we know it didn't happen, but what did happen is August 2014, New Japan makes two big announcements that Wrestle Kingdom 9 is going to be held at the Tokyo Dome on January 4th, which not usually a big deal. I mean, I think it's always on that day. And
Yeah.
now there's a partnership with Jeff Jarrett's Global Force Wrestling. Now you might be asking yourself, what? Yeah, this was the first time New Japan presented Wrestle Kingdom, their WrestleMania, on American pay per view. And of course, it was all going to be happening on Fight. As a wrestling junkie like myself, I'm sure you were excited about that. But did you also wonder, hey, does that mean they need a commentator?
Well, it was an option. It
Yeah.
was there to do. They needed a play-by-play guy because it's a whole brand new presentation. Like I said, I was very relieved that someone with the skill set and the product knowledge of Josh Barnett was going to be my partner. And out of that developed a great friendship to the last this very day. And I have a lot of respect for Josh. I like him. He's a hell of a good guy. He's like a younger brother, and he's always had my back. And we would go to we did our recording in L.A. Live area at the offices of Access TV, in a little room smaller than where I am now. And then then the time came where everybody built up their excitement about doing a live show on television, and that was something to look forward to, and it was cool. It was a good deal. So, but I enjoyed the whole experience of those guys. They paid me well. They treated me right. You know, I always had a car waiting on me at the airport to take me to my hotel, which was the Marriott there at LA Live, where I stayed. So I didn't even have to rent a car. I walk upstairs to the studio and start doing voiceovers. And but they gave me good notes, a little background stuff, much like Alex Marvez does now for the AEW guys. You know, Alex is really great at putting these fun facts together, records, win loss records, et cetera, that you can add to the story if you choose to. So I got notes. I think a guy named Danny Zach handle that. Another great kid, friend. So it started out good and got better.
Let's talk about how it all came together, though. I mean, when Jeff Jarrett's involved, I mean, my perception is in 2014, you probably hadn't been in any sort of regular communication with Jeff
No,
since he left with the whole China circumstance years ago.
yeah.
What was your relationship, if there was one at all, with Jeff at that point?
Well, we'd been apart for quite some time and had moved on, so to speak. You know, I was never pleased, and I'm not pleased today that China thing ended up like it did. It was embarrassing, and it was a lot of false information floating around on that deal. Uh, but Jeff came to me and said, you know, here's what I'd like to do, and you want to do this show. And you know, I knew what Wrestle Kingdom was. I knew it was the New Japan version of WrestleMania.
Right.
It's going to be Hilton Stadium. It's going to be packed. It's going to be a big crowd, and so let's give it a shot. And so I look forward to that deal. It was funny. I don't know. I don't know how to approach it today any differently than I did then. But it's a situation where when I worked with Matt Striker on that show, which was another surprise. I'd worked with Matt before in WWE. He's a smart guy, uh, and you know I enjoyed working with him. He's like me. He's a little bit of a wrestling nerd. I used to have a southern accent, but he was a good partner. He was prepared, but you know normally when you sit down to do a broadcast, you have a producer in your ear,
Mhm.
counts you out of the segment, counts you into the segment. If there's a B roll of you know that adds to the storytelling, you know you get counts to that uh, in this entire show. And I guess that show, Connie, was probably 4 hours, something like that. It was ridiculously long because it was booked big time, packed. Uh, I I just had I sat there the whole show waiting for somebody to say something from the truck. Never heard a word. If it was 4 hours long, we had 4 hours of silence. You know, and I had a format except for one small detail. It was all written in Japanese.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so we have Japanese formats. I can't read Japanese, unfortunately. I'm not that smart. Uh, and we just waddled through it. We just went through it. I've always said, in somewhat of an egocentric way, perhaps, in the ears of many, that if you put it on the monitor, I can call it.
Right.
I'll make an attempt to call it and tell your story for you if I can see it on the monitor. And that's kind of how I told Stracker. I said, this is how we're going to do it. And, you know, you got to kind of take control. And I said, you just follow me. If we screw up, then it's my fault. And so that's what we did. And it was a really unique experience to have a show that big, that important for the wrestling world and the wrestling scene to be uh, here. My point, I think, is I don't know that the New Japan people and their TV people and Jeff's people were on the same page, just detail wise. I mean, we got through it. We had a nice show. I've never watched it back, but people seem to like it, and I like what we did. You know, that's where I first saw some of the greats. You know, Okada for the first time live. You know, I was so high on, oh God, what's his name? He just had a great match with Shinsuke Nakamura.
Yes. He was your guy.
He was my guy. And it was funny, before the show, so many of those guys came up to introduce themselves. And you find out, well, no matter the language barrier, they were fans.
Right.
You know, they watched the work that I was doing on for other companies. But it was a good deal. I got all my money. You know, Jeff, I worked out a deal where I got a piece of the pay-per-view sold
Good.
in addition to a guarantee. So Jeff treated me fine. You know, and you can't, you know, you can't just live in the past. You know, like I said, the China thing was not handled well, and I'll take my share of the responsibility for that. And it strained Jeff and my relationship, which is what it was. But over time, I got over that, and I think he did too. I saw him last night in Jacksonville. So
Did you think this would be a one-off, that you were going to do that first Tokyo Dome Wrestle Kingdom show as a one-off and then
yeah,
it grew from there?
yeah, I thought so. I thought it was a one-off all along.